So, the first thing that I want to talk to you about today is parts of speech. Because if we preview our sentence frame, you see that it has lots of parts of speech. I have article, adjective, noun, verbs, and some where phrases. And for some of you, a when phrase as well. So first, I wanted to take a quick minute to just review what all of those parts of speech look like and how we use them in a sentence, just to give us a nice background knowledge before we start. The first part of speech we're going to talk about is an article, and this one is really simple. It's small words like a, an, or the that we put at the beginning of a sentence. For example, I could start a sentence with the pen, or the table, or a paper. So that's how you would use an article. Lots of times it's how we start a sentence. The next part of speech I want to talk about is adjectives. And what adjectives let us do is they help us describe nouns. So I just gave you the example of a pen. If I wanted to use an adjective to describe this pen, I could talk about the color. I could say the purple pen. I could say the thin pen, the light pen. It's not heavy. It is one pen. It's a round pen. So there's lots of different types of words you could use when you're trying to describe your noun. And so a good way to think about that, or to help you come up with some creative ones, is you can talk about the color of something. You can talk about the number or how many of them there are. You could talk about the size, big, little, huge, enormous, tiny, minuscule. You can talk about the shape. If your noun is a person, for example, the mother, you could talk about personality traits like kind, genuine, thoughtful. Or you could use your 5 senses. Maybe I have a scented pen and it smells like grape. I could call it the grape scented pen. The next part of speech we're going to talk about is a noun. And the noun is really the heart of our sentence. It tells us the person, place, or thing that we're talking about. So, in all of my examples where I just did an adjective, I was describing a person, place, or thing. I told you about my pen, so the pen was the noun. I could tell you about the table. I could tell you about the piece of paper. We could talk about people. People you know, could be mom, dad, sister, brother, grandparent, or a teacher. Or it could be, we could talk about famous people. We could talk about places like Winthrop Middle School, the marketplace, Massachusetts, Boston, the United States, Canada, Mexico. There's tons of places we could talk about. So when you're trying to think of a noun, you have some pretty infinite possibilities. The other one that I call the heart of a sentence is a noun and a verb. 2 things you can't have your sentence without. So a verb is an action. Some of you might have heard that in the background. My dog just sneezed. So that action that she did was she sneezed. Before that, she ran over here. Earlier, she walked and she ate. So our nouns, whether they're people, places, or things, they have lots of actions that they can do. For example, an action that I'm doing right now is talking, recording, teaching, breathing, standing. I'm doing lots of things all at once. And hopefully the action that you're doing is watching. Another part of speech that we're going to have to use in our sentence frame is a where phrase. And what a where phrase does is it sounds exactly like what it's called. It tells you where an action is happening. And so words that can kind of help us start a where phrase are words like in, on, under, around, above. They tell us where things are happening. So I just told you that my dog sneezed in the living room. So where did she sneeze? She sneezed in the living room. Or I could tell you my dog sneezed next to the table. So when you think about where, it can be places in a house, places outside. You could talk about a country, a town. Anything that tells me where something is happening is acceptable for a where phrase. The big reveal. Alrighty, that is our last one, a when phrase. And a when phrase does pretty much the same as a where phrase, except instead of telling you where, it's going to tell you when something is happening. So I could say, if we're using this example of my dog sneezed in the living room when I was making a video. So that tells you when something's happening. You could give specific times of the day. I could say she sneezed at 3:00. I could tell you what day of the week. She sneezed on Wednesday. I could tell you a season. Anything that kind of gives me a sense of when something's happening during the day, at night, at breakfast, at lunchtime, during dinner. All words like that really give you a sense of when something's happening. So that wraps up our initial review of what all our parts of speech are going to be. And now we're going to take that knowledge and begin filling out our sentence frame. So here I've made a little chart which takes all of our parts of speech that we learned, article, adjective, noun, verb, and where phrases, and we might add when. And what we're going to do is build a sentence using all of those parts. And why we want to build sentences like this is because it gives us really descriptive, really well-rounded sentences that make what we're writing or talking about interesting for other people to hear. So when I start, I always try to think of a noun. I try to think of the noun that I want to focus on. So the noun I'm going to pick right now is, I think I'm going to use my dog again. So my noun is dog. And then what I want to do is jump to my adjective column and describe my dog. So I could talk about her size. She is large. She's a large dog. I could talk about her color. She is a brown and red dog. I could talk about her personality. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to describe her personality. She is energetic. She has tons of energy. Then I'm going to add my article. And remember, articles are those little words like a, an, and the that often start our sentences. I'm going to go with the. So far I have the energetic dog. Then I get to my verb column. And if I remember what a verb is, it is a word that tells us an action. So I want to say what she did. She's done lots of things today. I'm trying to think of one. She can bark. The other thing I want you to remember when we're doing this is that your verbs, when we do this exercise, will work best if they're in the past tense. So that means it happened earlier. It's not happening right this moment. So I'm going to go ahead and add an ed to make that past. So I have the energetic dog barked where? She usually sits in a chair near the window. So I'll say barked in her chair. If I think back to this morning, when was she barking in her chair? I could say it was around 10 a.m. I could tell you it was on Thursday. But what I'm going to say here is the energetic dog barked in her chair when the mailman came. She often barks when the mailman comes. So that tells you where she was and when she did it. Lots of combinations you could do there. You can come up with any kind of sentence that you want using these frames. My only piece of advice is it is easiest if you always start with a noun. You want to know what you're talking about before you start describing it and telling me what it did. You want to pick that noun and you'll have a really solid foundation to your sentence.